I put out a number of videos so far, and sometimes, I still struggle with finding inspiration, especially on what to do the intro on. I tend to do kind of a funny sort of thing with my intros to kind of snap you guys out of whatever it is you're going through and get your mind focused on the here and the now. And sometimes I just can't think of anything that, seems really good. Like I was going to do masturbation jokes as the intro for this one. I started looking them up online and none of them really matched the feel of what I'm going for with this project. And this has brought up a good point to me. The idea that sometimes we're not going to be inspired to do the things that we really think would be best for us to do. And it's the same way with staying clean from porn and masturbation. Sometimes you're going to feel very strongly that, I'm going to, fight this urge. I'm going to stay away from porn and I'm going to, feel awesome doing it. I'm going to be totally motivated. But the reality of the situation is, you're not always going to feel like that. Sometimes you're just going to have to do it, regardless of how you emotionally feel. Because if you're relying entirely upon your own emotional incentives, then there's going to be a limitation to how far you can go towards reaching your goals. So take this intro, for example, okay? I didn't have any inspiration to do any kind of intro, and here I am making myself do it anyway, and I've got a great point out of it, got an intro, and we can relate it back to what you're doing. So in the same way, when you go through your reboot, and sometimes you don't have inspiration, you don't feel really good about staying clean, if you just do it, you're still going to get the benefits. Something good is still going to happen. Welcome to the Sacred Sexuality Project. My name is Mark Weppett, and I'm here to help you quit porn and live a higher expression of your sexuality. And today what I'm going to be talking about is how to deal with doubt around, your commitment to quitting porn. Okay? Because I think this is a problem that comes up for a lot of people, whether they begin to question, whether porn addiction exists or not, or maybe they feel like it's stupid for them to be doing this, or, why the heck would you deprive yourself of something that can feel so good, or whatever the thought may be. There's kind of one solution I find to answering all of those things. I think it's really important to find the solution, because otherwise you can find yourself getting knocked off path, falling down into emotional ditches, relapses, binges, all kinds of stuff, because you lose focus of what you're trying to do. And it's very important to be able to mentally right your ship if it starts to tip on its side and sink. So really, the key to doing this is based entirely around understanding what, one, porn has done to you, and two, understanding who you want to be. So knowing these two simple things will help you deal with a myriad of different kinds of arguments, such as, the idea that porn addiction doesn't exist, that, masturbating to porn is healthy, that, the whole notion of why would you deprive yourself of such great pleasure, and, a number of other things, there's not research proving that porn addiction exists, and, the list goes on. And you can really construct a response to all of these things if you know what porn has done to you, and two, you know who you want to be. In my own personal case, what porn did to me was, well, it did a lot of things. It made it so that I was unable to motivate myself with positive things. I could only motivate myself through fear of pain, because my threshold for pleasure was so high, since I was regularly experiencing these peak orgasms, that every other kind of motivation, positive motivation, didn't even register. Another reason was obviously, my morals and values as a Catholic. Went against everything that, I'm supposed to believe in terms of sexuality and stuff, and morality, really, considering, the content of some porn, that, I was buying in and acting on something that didn't agree at all with my morals or values. And honestly, the biggest thing is that I saw it as a huge obstacle to me having a true and intimate connection with the girl that I loved. She's my fiance now, and I honestly don't know if we ever would have gotten to this step had I stayed with porn. Okay, so I recognized that through porn I was lying to her, and I was not really truly giving her my best. I was not making her my exclusive intimate partner or anything like that. So you can see all these things really stacked up to form a bunch of big negative side effects that were very clear to me. Now, the negative side effects of your own porn use might be similar to mine, or they might be completely different. The key is just understanding what they are and linking them to porn or the mindset that porn fosters. Okay, so like, just by understanding how it affects you, you create your own leverage, your own emotional leverage as to why you should not be doing this. And then other people's arguments kind of become irrelevant because, we're talking about what matters for you. The second big point is to understand who you want to be as a person. So like, this is really important, especially if you're kind of struggling to come up with the negative consequences of porn. I know some guys, they go back and forth and they think that, maybe it's other things causing these problems, etc., etc. So identify who you want to be. So I want to be completely committed to my fiance, who will ultimately become my wife, and, porn was a direct block to that. Additionally, I don't want to look at women as objects. I don't want to look at any woman as an object ever. That doesn't fit with who I am. So why would I want to do something that essentially trains my brain to look at women as objects, right? Because when you're clicking through porn, what are you doing? You're evaluating women entirely upon their ability to perform sexual acts and their appearance. And you're training your brain to do that. So the more you do that, the harder it is going to be to not do that in regular life. So if you find yourself not being able to even kind of relate to these reasons, there's even the more general reason of not wanting to be a slave to your libido. The idea of you want to be able to make your own conscious choices whenever you want, instead of being bullied by your sex drive and your compulsions. People might argue with you and say that, it's so much easier if you just, give in to porn and you just, accept it. The only reason you're having any trouble is because, you're fighting yourself. You're fighting your natural urges. So my response to that is essentially that a prison doesn't seem like a prison if you want to be there. Okay? So if you want to have a porn habit, if you want to give in to your lusts on a regular basis, then, you're not going to have too much overt trouble with the addiction. However, at that point, I would have to point out, what are the effects of this addiction? Is there, what are you missing out on? What are you losing because, you don't have control of this? What would your life look like if you were free from the control of your libido? What would it look like? What could you do? How would that affect your romantic relationships? How would that affect your work? If you want, you can even look at breaking free from porn as addressing a much deeper and core issue, which is the idea of true freedom, true free will, where you are making the best decisions in any given circumstance, regardless of what your impulses are. So if you can't see the value of that, then I honestly don't even really know what to tell you. And if the people who you're explaining this to, if you find yourself in a conversation and you're explaining it, if they can't understand that either, well, what level are they really operating on? What do they really value if they don't see the value of learning how to be free from compulsions? So I know this video is a bit of a ramble, but ultimately what I want for you guys is to be able to navigate these mental blocks that'll come along your way, that'll challenge you on your path. And I want you to be able to look at these things and keep track of what's truly important to you. So hopefully you found this helpful, and until next time, y'all stay clean.